Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 93.3 Real Talk Radio and Warchant TV. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us. Good Monday to you. Now, for those driving around listening on 93.3 Real Talk FM, you may be saying, I don't know, sounds like maybe this was a record. It was. And those of you watching on video on Warchant TV, you know instantly that, in fact, it was a record as well. This is a travel day, but it's fresh content nonetheless. Nothing changes. Big week for the ACC. It's ACC kickoff, and I'm on my way there. I'm driving right now. Hopefully, at the time that you're tuning into this, I've made quite a bit of progress, and I have nearly arrived in Charlotte. I do plan to depart awfully early in the morning or at the time that you're listening to this today. And I will mosey on into the rental and make my way through downtown Charlotte and get over there to get set for the ACC kickoff. The action really gets going after most people travel that cover these programs and this league. Tomorrow, the action really gets going on Tuesday as obviously teams arrive, have an opportunity to talk to those that cover these teams, at least the initial bunch or batch that comes in, including Miami. And that includes Virginia, with an opportunity maybe to talk a little bit to Virginia, because Florida State obviously playing both those teams relatively early in the season. ACC first game for Florida State is the Virginia game on a Friday night in Charlottesville. So we'll see if we can get the lowdown on expectations with those two programs, maybe talk to coaches and players. We'll see. And then obviously Wednesday, Florida State arrives. We will be there. A proud representative of 93.3 and Warchant is the Jeff Cameron Show. And then, of course, Ira will be there, Corey Aslan, Matt Lasser, and a whole crew of us putting in work this week in Charlotte. Really, it's one of the final check marks when we're set to go away that I have on my list of things to do before football gets going in earnest. Normally, when they return from the ACC kickoff is when practice gets underway. We've already made it to July 21st. It is hard to believe that basically football season is here. We had a few days off, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this past week. Tom, I know you took it to Orlando. I took it down to the beach in St. Augustine with my wife. Hopefully the rest and relaxation and the fun times had by the both of us was enough to clear the palate and get ready for a different taste test, a different kind of exercise now as we get to dive into what is, I think, an extremely intriguing season. I know that for Florida State, normally we'd like to have lofty expectations of what's possible. We'd like to believe that as a program annually, we're going to be in the running to win the ACC. I don't think that there's a very large percentage of this fan base that looks at the ACC kickoff with that in mind, with that sort of fervor for a league championship, perhaps a playoff berth. I think that most people, even the most optimistic amongst Florida State's faithful, are just hoping that this is a team that looks much more buttoned up, plays a lot harder and smarter, cares deeply, has a passion for the program, has a passion for the game, has a passion for each other, and gives themselves a chance to win every week when those things come together, because obviously what a collective disaster it was a year ago. And so with that as the backdrop, I think it's fascinating to talk to Mike this week. Obviously, we'll talk to players too. We don't know which ones. I'll be hearing back from Derek today on my travels to Charlotte. The SID, Sports Information Director at Florida State there for football. Derek will get back and let me know which players, how many of the players, obviously Norvell, and kind of the times in which that'll happen for you. So our schedule is sort of fluid this week while we're there. But I'm very fascinated to see I want to hear the tone that Mike has. I'm kind of interested certainly in the demeanor that Mike has. I've been thinking a lot more about this, ironically, on the heels of Scotty Scheffler winning the Open Championship, the British Open. Now he has captured all of the majors save for one. So he has one victory that is elusive for him to win the career Grand Slam. He's done a lot in a hurry. But the point of me bringing him up is not his victory yesterday. That'll be the third hour. We'll have a little bit more of comparative notes there and some historical perspective about that. But it's really about the attitude that he's had. And when he's talked a lot about how fleeting the good times are, how hard you have to work every day to put yourself in a position to have success in whatever it is you pursue, whatever it is you call a vocation, a career, whatever it is that you have a passion for. And it is hour upon hour, year upon year, day upon day, obviously month upon month, that you pour yourself into this endeavor with the hopes that you'll get the most out of whatever it is you possess, the most out of your skill set, the most out of whatever toughness you can conjure mentally, the most out of each situation. And obviously, Mike Norvell came far from his best in terms of effort and results last year. A staggeringly poor season, which has been very well documented. And for a guy like Mike, who had such great success and such an incredible rise in the coaching profession at a young age, I've got to imagine that the roller coaster ride of these last 2 years, the fleeting success, the unbelievable outcomes, the undefeated regular season campaign, an ACC championship, only to have the rug ripped out from under you, in which you were cheated, in which you were robbed of the opportunity to cap a dream season with a championship. What that had to have done to really your sense of fairness, your overall outlook on the sport that you've chosen to work in, the field that you've worked in, obviously the league that you play in, the NCAA, you name it. And then to follow it up with that equally as staggering result, only on the wrong side of it, the wrong end of it. Where is his head at? Where are his emotions? How does he view these 2 seasons in terms of the way he'll answer these questions this week? Is his mindset one of understanding why he's being asked incessantly about something he'd rather forget? Is it more frustration, aggravation? Is he going to be ill-tempered, short, curt, maybe in his responses to those kinds of questions in an effort to move past it and solely look at what's ahead of you? Going back to the analogy with Scotty Scheffler, he talked about winning a major and having his family there and his coaches there and his team there, and saying that, the reason that I got emotional when I was discussing that at the dais was because I realized so many people had to sacrifice so many things. And in addition to all of the work that I've put in, and how quickly it all moves on to the next. Because if you get caught wallowing in both success and or failure, you preclude yourself from having future successes and giving yourself the best possible to succeed at the very next event that you're going to play, or the next round of practice that you're going to have will not be its best because you reside in the past. And I know Mike wants to move on. I know Mike is desperate to turn the page, to move on to a new chapter, to not have to discuss 2 and 10, to not have to wallow in the past, but also to do that. You certainly have to have a great perspective of what these 2 years have meant before you can ever dive in to this upcoming season. So I'm curious. It's a balancing act. I think it's very difficult. It's a rarely seen dynamic, because there are very few occasions in history in which a program this rich, with this much cachet, have ever seen the kind of topsy-turvy results that we've had to discuss for the last 2 college football seasons. It's been a weird ride for all of us in the media to be on. But to be sure, Mike's going to have to answer that. He's going to get asked about it a lot. And I think to some degree, no matter how eager, how much of a yearning you have to turn the page, you've got to understand that that has to be asked, because it was such a staggering result. And now, how do you answer it? Somewhat with humility, but also some grace, in a way that allows you to turn the page and say, we're really excited about the 2025 campaign. We learned a lot from what occurred a year ago, and it has been a lot to deal with, but I feel like we've made positive changes. We're excited about the players we've brought in. Obviously, I'm excited about the coaches that I've brought in, and it's a chance now for us to get into practice here in a week or so, to start seeing exactly what we have. We had the spring to implement. Now we got to hit the ground running. Some more of the kids that we expect to contribute are now going to be with us here in the fall. Obviously, some of those kids, are high-profile kids, like a Chroma. So you've got an opportunity to add to the list of reasons that you're excited about 2025. But you're going to have to answer some questions about 2024 too. So I think it's an interesting week and a weird tightrope to have to walk.
Yeah, for me, I think what we're doing here right now is we're entering the championship rounds of rhetoric. It's almost over. This offseason has been a slog. It has been a war on our own sanity as Florida State fans. And we've heard a lot. We've heard a lot said. We've heard a lot speculated. You and I are participating in that conversation on the broadcasting side of things. We've had that conversation, and we've had it for hundreds of days, and I'm over it. And this week is not quite go time, but it signals that go time is right around the corner. So it is the championship round segment of rhetoric season. They're going to reset what they're going to talk about what they're going to do, who they are, what the offseason's been like. I've seen a real commitment to the day-to-day tasks and the opportunities being taken full advantage of by this roster. I mean, you're going to be hearing all those things. I am looking for nuggets from players and Mike across the 4 or 5 media availabilities that he has across the different multimedia forms of ACC Network or Radio Row or the breakout room where he goes for 40 minutes straight. I'm looking for nuggets of information from there. That's, to me, what's the most important thing at this point. I'm getting eager. I'm looking at the calendar. Yes, we've got just a little more than a week left in July. We're nearly in August. Let's get some answers here. Is this man a man who was very good at the group of 5 and overmatched at the Power 5 and bailed out by the portal? Or is this a very good coach who maybe got a little complacent or took his finger off the pulse of the program for one season after something that, happened to his program that has never happened to any other program in the history of the sport? Who is he? I'm looking forward to getting those answers, and all we have to do is stomach about, 3 more weeks of we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and we're there. I love this event because it signals what is to come, and it is really right around the corner.
Yeah, I don't think that I understand what you're saying. Every one of these events, by definition, feature a lot of rhetoric from every coach. There are certain standard answers to certain types of questions, the prototype of which we've heard many, many times. And so you'll get a lot of the sameness that you're talking about there. But I do think there's some opportunities to kind of reveal a little bit of the roller coaster and maybe a little bit more of exactly who you are and what you expect moving forward. And I think he would do well to frame it in such a way and not as a manipulative device, but again, to rehumanize a guy that I think is, for the most part, very likable. I think that, it's interesting. The fan base, I think, still largely probably better than 50%. Tom, I don't know if you agree with that. Still wants Mike Norvell to be their coach. But it's tenuous. It's certainly tenuous. He's put himself in a very dicey predicament. Even the most ardent supporters have to admit that they have serious doubts now about whether or not that's possible for Mike to hold on and make it through this. They're rooting for him too. I think that's, for most of us, the truth. But maybe a rekindling of what it was that you liked about the guy so much when he was having success before this disaster of a year ago. Maybe that's incorporated in some of these answers. I don't know. I would be interested to hear what he would talk about with a PR rep, like the Jeff Cameron Show PR firm. We're there in his living room and we're sipping on a glass of wine and we're saying, now, Mike, next week is the launch of a pretty important season and a pretty important time for you. And why don't we go over again how it is we've arrived at this place and what do you think is important to convey in Charlotte? Because this is going to be the national media that is there that covers college football, as well as those that are on Tobacco Road covering the ACC. And, of course, your local media that covers you on a daily basis. You're going to be able to check all 3 boxes. You don't get too many places in which you get to do that. So what is the message we want to convey here?
Yeah, well, I think for the national media, he's still going to get runoff questions from last year. So he's going to have to play the hits with them. And that could be at that TV setting, when he's on the main stage, you get like 6 questions and it's all generic nonsense. So there'll be a question or 2 about Gus. There'll be a question about 2 and 10. There'll be a question about the offseason. What did you learn? Yada, yada, yada. So he'll be able to play the hits there. Radio Row will be interesting to see because different markets have different angles they want to take. The breakout room, the local availability, if they do it again this year, Florida State typically gives an availability, a separate one to all of us who cover the team day to day. That's the one that moves the ball forward. If he wants to test how he wants his redirects to work and how he wants to frame things moving forward, It would be with us because we have been there at booster stops. And I don't mean like I didn't get in the car, go to a booster stop, but you get the point. There have been people from all organizations going to Orlando and Tampa and Pensacola and all over the place following him after spring camp, documenting all of these little steps along the way. So there will be different points at which he will say things that are new. And I agree with you. I think I look at it this way. I think over 50% of the fan base wants him to be the head coach for one of two reasons. One, they like him. Or two, it would be way easier if we didn't have to start over again. And so therefore, it would be great for him to succeed so we don't have to hit the reset button all over again. I think those two camps combined are well over 50%. But I think a lot of people feel like probably you and I do. I'm not trying to speak for you. I don't care anymore about like, oh, he's the feel good this, the feel good that. This is a smoker gets smoked this year. It's time. And I'm hoping that the energy that he conveys, and I don't know what time he's going to convey. Hold on to your butts if you're FSU PR. And the other three guys that go up there, I just hope they convey a unified sense of it's go time. They're okay. Last year was last year. We have to move on. And it's not about just the Alabama game, not propping that up. It's time to get to friggin' work and wipe the taste from our mouths that was last year, which was so bitter.
Yeah, and I don't think well, first of all, I think you're right that there's well over 50% of this fan base that wants Mike to be the coach, partly because of what you said there, that they like him, but then also they don't want to have to start over, and that's for sure. This is a year of important development, I think, for Mike as a CEO coach, and I think for this staff in terms of player development. I think they've got to find a way to showcase that their ability to develop the talent that they bring in the high school ranks is getting better. They've been, as it turns out, too reliant on the portal. The portal's changed in the short time that we witnessed them exploit it to their advantage, but also have it turn around and bite them in the butt. So now we know that the bulk of your blue chip talent has to be developed from the high school ranks and then supplemented with a key player here or there through the portal ranks, because most of the offensive and defensive linemen, the edge rushers, are players that you're going to get in the high school ranks. So you want to see a lot of things take a step forward this year. You want to see development. You want to see Mike's mindset change now that he's a CEO coach. Is he in a better position to execute all of that? You want to see a number of things maybe hinted at, and maybe we get some revelations this week at the ACC kickoff. You're right. A lot of it will be rhetoric, but a lot of it might be revelatory, which would be really, really nice. Chef Cameron Show 93.3, Real Talk Radio, and Warchant TV. Chef Cameron Show, Travel Monday. On our way to Charlotte. Appreciate you listening. Fresh content. Excited to be, 31 days away from the start of college football? Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. So this week, while in Charlotte, we drop into the 20s, Tom. 20s in terms of days until the start of college football. Not Florida State football, but the start of college football. That is music to my ears. That is rather heavenly, one might say. To get into the 20s, you're basically in football season. We've made it. We've made it through this long, arduous, frustrating, scathingly hot summer together, and we've made it to a time where now we can rightfully not speculate and spend our days mired in conjecture, but have real answers to real questions from real reporters and coaches and players, and start talking about what it means, what it doesn't mean, and what it all adds up to. I've been thinking again about the expectations of the program, thinking again, where does Florida State sit in the ACC? Kind of curious to see what that vote reveals. We'll get that vote this week from the ACC media as to the projected standings or rankings of the programs. I think last week we guessed when we talked about this, Tom, that 6th or 7th, you think Florida State will be ranked or voted within the ACC, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6th or 7th in the league?
Yeah, I think if the ACC media is not playing the off-season lawsuit settlement favoritism game, I think if they go down the line and they stick to what is reasonable, I think 6th or 7th is fair. And, there are many years where 6th or 7th would mean that ACC Tobacco Road media hate us so much they decide just to vote us in last out of spite. but now that seems about right. Florida State's kind of shooting for a top 4, top 5 finish in the ACC this year. Like that seems to be something that would be considered a successful campaign. Very sad. Very sad.
Yeah, I think the only schools that if you were going to look at what they've developed and what they've recruited and who their quarterback is, I think those are the 3 most important components. Who are the players you've developed? Who are the players you've recruited? So what's your ranking in essence? What if you look over the last 3 or 4 years, what have you brought in? And then who is your quarterback? Because you may have brought in a lot of talent, but if you don't have a starting quarterback, it all goes for naught. And when you do that and you look at the ACC, it's, Clemson's ahead of you. There's no doubt about that. I think Miami is ahead of you. Unfortunately, they are in overall talent. From there, it gets interesting because I don't know that definitively you'd put a bunch of teams ahead of Florida State. Not in terms of the collection of talent that's there. You might have, obviously questions after regarding who the quarterback is for the football team, but not in terms of the overall collection of athletes. Not even like an SMU, who I think has done a great job, and Rhett Lashley's done a very good job. But I don't know that athletically when we watched that game last year, Tom. I know what the final score was, and I know how it played out, but I didn't feel like FSU was longing for the level of athleticism that SMU possessed. And I don't know that there's any other team besides Clemson and Miami within the ACC that I would say that about definitively. There are teams that are maybe a better collection of players. Maybe they got a better quarterback, and they've been cohesive. So you kind of expect them to continue along the path. Georgia Tech would maybe fill in that category. They've got a quarterback that's been there. They run a system. They ran it very well. So maybe they're a better collection of players in terms of the team that they make up. I don't think Georgia Tech has more talent than Florida State. So I just don't know how many teams I would say if Florida State is buttoned up, plays hard, plays smart, plays physical, plays to the best of their ability. I would only look at 2 teams right now in the ACC that I say I know for sure I think they have more talent than Florida State.
That's fair. Did you see last week during the break Andy Staples' ACC quarterback hierarchy?
No.
Happen to see that? If you catch Andy up at in Charlotte, maybe that'd be something to chat over. So he listed his top 10 quarterbacks in the ACC and put out a list and a graphic and all that kind of stuff. Tommy C was not among the top 10 quarterbacks in the ACC, according to Andy Staples, and that would be where I think a lot of national reporters who don't know a whole lot about each team individually and they're coming to the ACC kickoff to learn. I think that's the sense there is like this is a risk that they're taking with a quarterback who runs first, who isn't really accurate, but it's a system that fits him. And then they've got a whole bunch of new dudes. So Florida State is a grand mystery. Like to me, I think if everything goes Florida State's way next year within ACC play, you could go to Charlotte as the number 2 seed, as the second team in the ACC. That's everything. Turnover luck, injuries, 50-50 moments, like kicks from 45-plus yards for both teams, wind, rain, all that stuff. And then the floor is total disaster because the culture can't withstand early adversity, and it implodes on itself, and you're, probably 10th in the ACC. But if you're just looking at quarterback and knowns or quarterback and trends, I could see why Florida State is where it likely is going to be with the ACC preseason vote. The good thing is, like, even in the good times for Florida State, the ACC vote was usually wrong. In 12, they thought we were the creme de la creme. In 13, they thought we were going to take a significant step back. And they were wrong both of those years, significantly so. Last year, boy, were they wrong. The year before, in 23, I don't think they liked us the way that it ended up being, which was, a perfect run through the conference. So bring it on. Put us at 6th or 7th, and then let us go surprise and overachieve.
I got no problem with that. I just want to point out here, I'm sure Andy received the same sorts of vitriolic emails and message board response and tweets that I did after noting that Tommy Castellanos has not been an upper crust quarterback in college football. I'm sure he did. And it's been noted by anybody that's covered college football that he hasn't been very good. It's just like, I just, so people don't think like I'm this extreme outlier hater or something. He just hasn't. If you watch the games, it just hasn't been. Now I don't know that there's the list right there. If you're watching on Warchant TV, he's got Klubnik, Mensah, he's got Beck, Jennings, King, Bailey, Lopez, Holstein, Drones, Angeli. I don't know much about Steve. I've seen Drones. Yeah, that's a comparable player. I don't know enough about Lopez. Haynes has been better. Jennings has been better. Beck has been better. Darian's a transfer. Clay. Oh, obviously Cade's better. He's a projected first rounder in the NFL. It's not a crazy list. The thing of the point of the discussion with Tommy Castellanos isn't to necessarily degrade or denigrate him as a person or even as a college football quarterback. It sounds that way sometimes, but that's not the point that I was trying to make when I've talked about this. It's not the point of the conversation, in my opinion. I think the way the conversation should go is, if you needed somebody to make accurate throws while surveying the defense pre-snap, checking into right place, pinpoint accuracy, great form, second, third in your progressions, yeah, Tommy's not it. He's not a guy that you would want here. He's not a guy that would win you a lot of football games. He's not a guy that really would warrant much discussion in the pantheon of quarterbacks in college football. He hasn't been that player. But when you apply the skill set that he has to the offense he's being asked to run, well, obviously now we have a chance to talk about the success far outweighing wherever you would rank him as an NFL prospect at quarterback. He's not an NFL prospect. He is not going to play quarterback in the National Football League. He doesn't project as a quarterback, as a passing quarterback, as somebody you'd be all that interested in. But that is also not what he's being asked to do here. And that, in many ways, is no different than the elite quarterbacks that ran the triple option or some form of option. All our lives, we've watched quarterbacks that didn't project to the league, that ran those kinds of systems, but were sons of bitches to deal with, that were perfectly suited for what they were being asked to do, and they could throw well enough to really make an engine hum, to make an offensive system built like this one is really shine. And so that's the juxtaposition when we have the conversation about Castellanos that I think is necessary. There's a caveat in all this. If I were ranking quarterbacks who throw the football accurately, who I would want to lead me from the pocket, he would maybe be last in the ACC. He might be. He might be last in the ACC. But that is not why he was brought here, and that is not the system that Gus Malzahn is going to ask him to run, and that is not what you're going to witness. And so if we just started ranking quarterbacks on the ability to really run the football, make guys miss, sell it, and then make a throw off of wrinkles within this offense, within this system, well, he might be amongst the very best, along with a Haynes King, right? He would be somebody you would immediately gravitate to. So if you're drafting quarterbacks in the league, the ACC, the way that draft goes is predicated solely on the system you're asking them to run. And a passing system with complex route combinations, he's not getting drafted. And that is not to comment on, like, I'm not saying he can't understand it. He might very well understand it. It just hasn't been part of his skill set. The ability to execute that with consistency in the pocket is not what he's done. And it's why he lost his job at Boston College. He was trying to run a system that is not suited for him, which we still question, what were you doing in Chestnut Hill? I mean, that's crazy to ask him to do that. I don't know why they did that. But thankfully, we're not asking him to do that. Instead, we're going to ask him to do something that he's been pretty good at. And maybe he takes a huge step forward because he runs a system that is going to take advantage of the skill set he does have. Chef Cameron Show 93.3, Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Yeah, the the discussion of projections with Florida State gets really dicey for a lot of reasons. And people, I think there's the clash between the reality of our situation and assessing a whole new, starting 22 in essence, and where from whence we came 2-10, to having that level of optimism that every single fan has every year a season is set to begin. And you're just constantly, you're wrestling yourself with yourself, you're just wrestling with the better angels of your nature, and also the little devil that's on the other side going, come on, man, this isn't going to work. You're like, oh, you're just negative because we were so bad last year. Dare to dream. Why can't you dream? Because I'm a realist and you're living a lie. Let me live this lie. They haven't even started practice yet. No, I won't let you disappoint yourself in this manner. You know how crippling it was a year ago. You dared to believe that nonsense, and they were the worst team in college football. Well, it's not the same team this year. They went out and got a whole new roster and fired a lot of people who were the authors of that season. Yes, but it's the same head coach who let it happen. How much better do you think that guy's going to be? How did he let that happen, huh? Damn it, man. Calm the voices in my head. Tired of this. And I run into it all the time. I'm running into it every day more and more and more. It's great. Over the weekend, when I got back from the beach yesterday, in fact, I swung past the always inviting arms of Gordo's. And Gordo's said, sit down and have your cold one. And I said, I will. I might have two. And it was in that moment that we began to discuss the upcoming season, and the conversation I just had, instead of it being by myself and within the confines of my skull, it was with 7 other people who all had those opinions, all of the things and everything in between. And it was comical. And I was with Tom in this moment, not at Gordo's, but just now when you said, we're about done with all this. We're going to know. We're going to know. The funny thing is there are layers to that too. Yeah, we're going to know. But I don't know exactly what we're going to know when the Alabama game ends. We might know that Alabama's a lot better than Florida State, and maybe that's all we know. And that's not cool. We might also know that Florida State is a lot better than we thought they were going to be, but I don't. It's funny.
Well, we're going to be collecting data. That's the key. Is we're going to be collecting data beginning with the Alabama game. That I just need that, even if it is obfuscating because it's game 1. They're good. We're not as good as they are. And you say, what did we really learn? Well, we learned more than we did when Mike went to the Sarasota Seminole Club and said that things are going to be better this time. Like, we learned more because we saw 150 plays of football where, yes, this might be like election night and 4% of the results are in, but you know what? 4% of the results are in. That's better than 0%. I don't care what the percentages say. It's a percentage. It's real. It's backed by real data. I'm looking forward to getting all of that information because there's you could lose by 20. You could win in a slop fest and feel like, I don't know that if this game is played 10 times, it ever looks like that again, and still see some things like instincts from linebackers. You could see attention to detail, pre-snap, defensive communication, guys getting downhill, giving a damn to tackle, swarming to the football on offense, a lack of false starts or many false starts, shifting before the play is snapped. Tommy Castellano's dynamics of yelling at guys and getting them into position before the snap. Does he have command of the offense? Cromag gets in. Does he look like the game's a little bit too fast for him? Like, all of those things plus, 30 other observations you'll be able to get from the Alabama game, even if the results is a little bit noisy and it feels a little bit flukish one way or the other.
Do you remember Louisville lost to Alabama in the season opener in 2018? And it was, I think, 51-14. I believe that was the final score, 51-14. And if you remember how the game looked, it was weird. In the second half, it almost looked like it was, I think I just pulled it up here. Yeah, the second half was 23-14. And I remember way back then, we kind of had a discussion about the tale of two halves. And we were saying, well, God, if Louisville hadn't kicked themselves in the shins early in this game and gotten down by a couple of scores in which they then had to start to force some things and come out of what they like to do, we're kind of noting that we thought that the score was not indicative of the way that the two teams looked physically, speed-wise. We didn't think it. Now, listen, 51-14 is 51-14. Alabama was clearly the better team, and we had no doubt about it. But it didn't feel as juggernauty as some of those Alabama teams had looked before. And I just can't help but kind of kicking that around in my head a lot, like you just how you're talking about being buttoned up and not making mistakes and just, failing to physically be able to fight with a team that has a better depth of talent and roster. That's one way to lose a game. We've done that to teams before. When we were really good, there were some teams that fought like hell and were extremely buttoned up and did some good things. And we kind of came out of those kinds of games admiring from a distance those teams. Boston College did that to us. Wake Forest has done that to us a few times where we won the game. And maybe when you go back and you go into the archives, nolefan.org or something, and you pull up the scores, you're like, oh, no, we won that game by like 30. Hey, why did I feel like that was close? Because of the way it played. It was, 14-7, 10 minutes ago in the half. You're like, this is a little closer than it needs to be. If they hadn't missed that field goal, this would be a 4-point game. And then you'd look at it again and you'd see, I know we were up by 17 in the third, but once again, they were driving and that kid fumbled on the 5. That could have been a 10-point game. Those kinds of games. So I please tell me that if Florida State loses in a lopsided fashion, there are elements of that sort of thing where it's not like, oh my God, we look idiotic. We just, I can stomach that we're not where we need to be. We got to get better at recruiting upper echelon players so that we can compete with the best in the game. But man, we know what we're trying to do. We're organized. Kids aren't jumping off sides left and right. We're not doing dumb things, dumb penalties, hitting guys late, allowing Alabama to extend drives when the defense really needed to get off the field. Not dumb stuff like that. Just stuff where you say, well, we don't have the horses. We don't have the horses, but yeah, we could win 8-9 games because very few teams have horses like Alabama's horses, so maybe we're going to be all right.
I can recall specifically Wake Forest in the middle of the last decade. Florida State handled business in those games, as I recall, just fine. One of which was, I think it was 2015. Dalvin scores a long touchdown early in the game, and then he pulls his hammy later in the game.
Yeah.
But it was a short yardage situation, and he just keeps going because nobody brought him to the ground. Those teams had Jesse Bates on them, and I remember Jesse Bates at Wake being such a badass safety, and now he's one of the best safeties in the NFL. He has been for a long time. He's currently on the Falcons. But I remember coming out of that game going, God, that guy is everywhere. That is annoying.
Yeah.
I think that's one very basic thing that I'm yearning for this year. Can we have a guy, like one? Can we have one guy? Last year, we did not have a single guy. The closest thing to it, I would argue, is Lawrence Toafili, and we would be frustrated because he'd break off a couple of nice runs and a couple of nice plays early, and you wouldn't see him again, but for maybe one touch or two, and those touches would come when the game was out of hand. Like last year, think back through one more time if you can muster up the energy to do it. Who was our dude? Was it like Josh Farmer for 5 minutes? Was it Darrell Jackson towards the end of the season? Was it Earl Little because he tried? Was it Toafili because he'd give you a gain of 10 every once in a while? These are the guys that we're picking from. We did not have a guy. Can you please promise me here today, sir, that one out of the 15 to 16 new starters we have, we're going to say, now that's a dude. That's a player. I'm hoping that we get at least a couple of them, and even an Alabama game, no matter what the score says, can teach you that. We go, well, that Boggs can play. Holy smokes. Or
right.
I see why they paid Chroma. Look at him. Or how about Randy Pittman? The versatility in his game, that's going to work. We got to have a little bit of that bare minimum coming out of game number one.
By the way, you have a very good memory, sir. And as I looked it up, it was 2015, and it was probably an indicator of problems to come for Florida State. We were 4-0. That game moved us to 2-0 in the ACC. We were number 11 in the country, and we kind of got outplayed. Dalvin Cook, Tom, had 2 carries for a grand total of 94 yards and a touchdown. And yes, he did hurt his hamstring on that play. And then, by the way, helping us rushing the football was Jonathan Vickers.
Jonathan Vickers. Wow.
Jonathan Vickers. The big day in receiving was Bobo Wilson, 5 for 77. Travis Rudolph had 6 for 69. Kermit Whitfield had a touchdown, 4 for 20, 4 for 24. And then you had Vickers with 2 catches as well. I think everybody has forgot Jonathan Vickers' career and what a day he had against Wake Forest. But yeah, Kendall Hinton was the quarterback for Wake Forest. He threw it 42 times that day and only had 1 interception. He was dinking and dunking. Everett Golson was our starting quarterback. He threw it 20 for 31 with 202 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, it was not we weren't good that day, man. They had way more first downs than we did. The time of possession, that final score was 24-16. 24 to it wasn't pretty. We played poorly, Tom. We played poorly against Wake Forest. Yes, like we always do. We played poorly against Wake Forest. Very frustrating.
Thankfully, we got a few things out of Dalvin. We got the most mileage we possibly could out of Dalvin in that situation. 2
carries, 94 yards, and 1 was early in the game, and it was really long because he bounced off a tackle up the gut and proceeded. I thought he was going 99. I thought he was going to the house on that play, but that's pretty funny. Yes, you're right. Seeing a dude emerge, believing that, okay, you've got some people you can hang your hat on, proverbially. You can say, all right, these are some things, these are some concepts that I think we can execute because we have the right personnel for running this. This is going to be a problem for opposing teams, especially ones that don't feature linebackers built like Alabama's that are 6'3", 245 and run 4.4 40s. Like those kinds of dudes are problematic. Most of them reside in the National Football League. They do not play college football. So when you face these next 2 opponents, they don't have anybody to stop this. And Virginia doesn't have a dude that's going to be drafted in the first round at linebacker. So come on now, guys. Let's gather ourselves and move forward. And then let's remind ourselves the level of talent you have to have in order to compete against the best in college football. And you do. And that's another topic, but it's a topic I want us to be able to move on to at the end of this year. What are we capable of in the modern landscape of college football with the money making up a big part of how this recruiting world ranks and works? Are you able to compete for championships right now? And how far away are you from doing that? And how is it that recruiting is the reason that you're being held back? You will get some sobering reminders based on that level of elite recruiting. It's on the schedule. You get it with Alabama. You're going to get it with Miami. You're going to get it with Clemson, and you're going to get it to some degree with Florida. They've recruited well. So you're going to get opportunities to look at it and say, well, that's kind of what it looks like. We need to do better. We also need to develop. We also need to find a quarterback of the future. So that's the kinds of conversations that are easier to have after you get this highlighted this year. But if that's the only conversation you're having, then you've already graduated back to a place that's a little bit more interesting than the offseason we've just had.
Well, and you're having a conversation after watching games too. Again, that's just that's the itch. It's human nature, and I'm falling victim to it. To finally be getting something here in the ACC kickoff, which is much closer to the season rather than what we've been through for the last 7 months. And to think, yeah, that's wonderful, but I can't wait to see the football, the actual playing of. But yeah, if we could get to that place, like by the time we're at Monday of Miami week, of course we're amped up for Miami week, but we're talking about real things instead of like, can they put one foot in front of the other? That would be very, very welcome because that would mean that things got off to probably a 3-1 start at that point.
Yeah, the Alabama game just is a different sort of deal. It just is. I know that it's what it is, and we hope to put our best foot forward. But God, I don't know that it's going to be indicative in one way or the other where the season's going to go. Hour number 2 forthcoming. Stay with. It's the Jeff Cameron Show on 93.3 Real Talk Radio and of course Warchant TV. Hour number 2, Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio and Warchant TV. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you had a great weekend. Good to be back with you. Again, just as a reminder, today's a travel day, so this is recorded. We got done doing this earlier. I'm on my way to Charlotte for the ACC kickoff. Fresh content, all new. Everybody's back. Tom's back. I'm back. We had our little vacation. It was nice. We're ready to go for the ACC tournament, but we do have to traverse to Charlotte. And that is exactly what I'm doing at the time that you are watching and or listening to this show. So thanks for your patience. If you're watching on Warchant TV, we appreciate your support. And if you're listening on 93.3 Real Talk FM, we really appreciate your support as well. As you well know, and as I've said repeatedly, by supporting 93.3, you're supporting the only locally owned and operated radio station in all of Tallahassee. That is good. That means you're supporting local, and we appreciate that. So thanks for all that. Just want to get that out there to you, just so you know, driving to Charlotte. Hopefully I'm not encountering anything weird. Hopefully by now, so what is it, 2 o'clock here in Tallahassee? Maybe I'm making great time. Tom, I've been known to make some good time to Charlotte now.
Yes.
I have broken records to Charlotte. There's a little Smokey and the Bandit in your boy over here. I can get you to Charlotte now.
You can do so at about a 12 to 14% discount on the GPS estimated time at departure. Like there's a time, that amount of time is in total minutes. Take about 12% to 14% off of the amount of minutes, and that's what you do. That's what you do. It's very nice. It's very, very well done.
I like it. I like it. Now, in all of the years, you were with me the one time I got pulled over. You were there that one time. That's it. That's the last time I've been pulled over. That was the first time I've been pulled over.
That's correct. You were pulled over on the way to Clemson in 2013, but that's because the headlights weren't on the rental car, and the cop was great. He's like, is this a rental? And he said, yes, sir. He said, does it come with lights? And you go, oh,
yeah.
Yes, sir, it does. And then that was that.
He was very cool. We weren't doing it. Yeah, I wasn't speeding through there. There had already been an accident. Much to your chagrin, you'd witnessed the results of said accident.
Yeah, dead body on the pavement. Great.
It's a toughie. That's going to stick with me a little while. That was a very different team.
Could you imagine going through that scenario and then driving up to watch last year's Florida State team go to Clemson? No. I would have said, take me home. Like the old commercial, take me fishing. I would have said, take me home. I want to go home.
The history of this event in the many years that I have been going to it has changed, has shifted. The meaning has changed. The conference is no longer on sturdy ground. The legs that hold up the ACC are wobbly, kids. It's not what it used to be. They don't have their sea legs about them at the ACC the way they once did. It was always, early on anyhow, a celebration of strength and a rising tide within the ACC. The SEC wasn't yet the powerhouse that it has now become, nor was the Big Ten. And there was, albeit fleeting, a thought that the ACC could emerge as the conference that leads the way into the future. And as we all found out, that turned out to be profoundly unso. It did not happen that way. In fact, it's kind of a miracle it's still here. It won't be for much longer. That hangs in the backdrop as we go to Charlotte, because I am curious while we talk about what is Florida State, what will Florida State be? Are they any good? How does Mike handle the questions about last year? What does Tommy C say? Is he reserved or is he flamboyant and over the top in his confidence? What do the other players say? How is Florida State perceived? All of that. Where will they be ranked preseason, if that matters to you? All those things. I am also curious, just sort of the perception of Florida State and Clemson, because Clemson is oft celebrated. Dabo has won over this group of basketball fans. And they tend to prop him up as the guy that's an aw shucksy kind of guy that they like on Tobacco Road, where Florida State has never really kind of been embraced in that way. And I guess the bulk of the hatred and frustration and perhaps blame will be cast at Florida State, since we were the pioneers that bravely stepped forth into the wilderness seeking another way. And Clemson will get ignored because Clemson's good. Clemson went to the playoff. Clemson has done a lot of winning. Florida State lately, not so much. But I will have to remind the people when I'm there today, oh, no. Your adopted son, Clemson, hates you too. Your adopted son has hated you and this entire family. They don't love any of you, so much so that they joined forces with us and said, we're leaving this family. We're not coming back to this family reunion very much longer. Enjoy this one, because soon we're exiting too. We're double middle of fingering you guys on our way out the door too. Get you some of that. Just a reminder.
I think it's fitting too, because Dabo plays kind of like a preacher who smiles at your face and then is robbing your pockets. You know, he's shaking your hand with one hand and he's robbing.
Yes, like all televangelists, correct.
Yeah, he's got some televangelism to him. He's got some of that energy, and I think that's appropriate here in this situation. And they got snowed over. I just wondered if you made sure to pack the T-shirt that said "We're worth more than you are" for these series of media days, because lest we forget, last time you were in Charlotte, they didn't believe
that
we were worth more than they are. And now this year is the first time back in Charlotte where they must understand and coexist in a room with Florida State, Clemson, and to a degree, I guess, North Carolina, Miami, that they're not worth as much as we are, financially speaking.
Yes, financially speaking, it is profoundly true, as agreed upon via a contract.
Yep. And
all that is, I might say, Tom,
the conference itself agreed to this contract.
Yeah, the conference not only agreed to it, thus defining terms to these other individuals that make up the member institutions, that Florida State is of greater value than all of them, not named Clemson. So the conference did this. They defined their terms. They put it in a contract and agreed to pay us more than everybody else. In a lot of ways, it was catered, one could say, towards the greatness and the value of the brand that is Florida State, along with Clemson, who jumped on board late, but has certainly earned their fair share because of the successes they've had in the last decade or more. So fair enough. All the rest of them have to live in a world in the ACC where the conference commissioner and the lawyers that fought with Florida State and Clemson eventually agreed that Florida State and Clemson were right and that they were more valuable than all the other assets in the league. And that's a tough thing to stomach. It'll be very interesting to hear the rather waffly, sort of tentative and timid voice of the commissioner as he stands before all, having made the decision to acquiesce. How does he handle that? What kind of strength does he project? Because last year was an effort to stare at the monitor as if you had a real vision for the future.
I also would like to know if that Tobacco Road media, who was so tough on this issue, is tough enough in that setting to ask the commissioner, why did you fail us? Why? Why did you fail our interests? You promised, Daddy Jimmy, that you could deliver and there would be no stone unturned, and make no mistake. Remember last year, he projected strength for the first time in that address. We said, well, where the hell was that 3 or 4 years ago? Where he said that we will not relent until we in this ACC bring everyone home. And that's where they belong. And now, a year later, I hope that they have the guts where they did not. I hope they have the courage and the fortitude to follow through on those tough statements and hold Jim Phillips accountable for his failures to them, because they were sold a bag of goods.
It's funny because, Tom, as we joke, but we're serious, very serious as well, that is all true. All those things are real. All of those realities are the world that the rest of these teams live in this league because their leader failed them miserably and caved to Florida State's every demand. So that is true. That is the world they live in. That is the life they have to live. It is also a world now, 1 year removed from the backbone speech, I call it, where now sans backbone, new reality, the sands of time and the hourglass have flipped. And they are rapidly descending to a time in which the league does not exist in any meaningful way. What a time to have to give an address knowing that the two greatest assets, by definition, that you defined in a contract that the ACC must abide by now, are on their way out the door, and every year that goes by, they are afforded the opportunity to do so for even cheaper than the previous season. So now you cannot, in the face of all of this, suggest that there is any strength or future to your league.
Yeah, I think that this would be a good time from a PR perspective for the ACC to maybe redefine their name, because clearly they have stretched west, they have stretched into Texas. Who knows what other entities they could try and poach from different time zones? But most everything has been on a coast. So maybe, what you can do is hide behind a little bit of good old fashioned patriotism and change the name of this conference to the American Coastal Conference. We will always be ACC, but now we are nationwide. And there you go. There's your presentation. You're all set. You redirect. You look towards the future. You speculate on Memphis and other institutions joining your conference, and maybe you go poach another team out west if the Pac-12 hasn't grabbed them. Chances are, if state is not in their name, they're available to be poached. Maybe that's what you do. You pivot forward and you understand that you're going to live in Conference USA, American Athletic Conference, Big East from post-ACC poaching existence. And that's not bad, but that's not the kitschy place you'd been accustomed to for the last 20 to 30 years, thanks in large part to the football value of a Florida State who you finally decided to pay for being valuable because they forced you to legally.
Well, in an era of jingoistic extreme nationalism, I think this would go very, very well. You could give said speech with the American flag fluttering behind you. People might get weepy-eyed as they currently do anytime the flag is visible. On the backs of trucks, randomly, people tear up at red lights. Jim, seize the opportunity before you. What an opportunity to rebrand a meek, rapidly fading power that once was. There you go. Dive in. Dive in. People won't fully vet. They'll jump in with you. Look around. So we'll see. We'll see if they do it or not. But you're right. I think it's a grand idea.
Yeah, well, and truthfully speaking, I think there's about a 4% chance that actually comes to fruition. They do need to rename themselves. They can't be the Atlantic Coast Conference anymore. They could just call themselves the ACC and drop what it stands for. And then they say, and that's what they are moving forward. It's just the brand, but it doesn't stand for Atlantic Coast Conference. But I really think if they just decided to flip the switch and they went with American Coastal Conference, there you go. Or the American Coasts, plural, conference. You got yourself your talking point, and you just bought yourself 15 minutes at that address you have to give that I don't know what you were going to do otherwise, because I don't know that you really want to open it up to the panel of questions for more than 2 or 3, and maybe one of those be David Teal and then another one be somebody that you handpicked.
I don't think they can go with the coastal aspect of this, Tom, because, the phrasing, the coastal elite. So what you have to do is rename the conference Freedom. Rename the conference Freedom and just constantly assuage fears by telling people over and over again you're fighting for their freedoms. Stand before the American flag as it flutters behind you and say, "Welcome to freedom."
which will be available on the CW 6 p.m. Saturday nights with Tom Brenneman on the call. How about that?
Tom Brenneman would take up the mantle for this conference. I'm sure of it. It's the Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. I remember this every year we've been on the air, every year the Hall of Fame games played, even the year when it was canceled because the field was in shambles. All of those years, I remember laughingly saying and knowing that it's a joke of a game and that in my mind's eye, it's the sign that the world is right. And then I come home and oh, this is terrible. I can't really watch this.
Right.
It happens every time. And yet, fast forward a year when we get about 7 to 10 days out, and I get a little giddy about the Hall of Fame game, knowing that it's nonsense and that I ought not, and the lessons of the past should serve the future. And yet they don't, because the little kid in me knows that when I pull in that driveway after the show and it's that evening and they're getting set to kick off, I'll walk through this door. I will fire up this 100-inch beauty of a television. I will crack a cold beer and I'll go, football is on. And for a moment, I'm on top of the world. I will turn it on. I will see the two teams warming up. They'll be in uniform. I'll see fans getting in the stands. I'll hear the familiar voices of announcers whom we know. And I will think, they're going to talk about football things while their players were warming up doing football things too. And then there are people in the stands buying beers to watch the football things. This is why we love the world and life. This is happening. And then the first two drives occur and the football is awful. And suddenly the vast majority of the people that are on the field are people that will not make the teams that are playing. And you think, it's kind of football. It's not really football. It's kind of football. There's a little bit of football to it, but it's not a lot of football. Not 3 hours worth of football that I can sit through anyhow. Maybe just a quarter of me watching a little bit of this football.
Yeah, it's the football that the UFL is akin to, just with better uniforms. I usually flip it on. I forget most every year because time gets away. You're watching baseball. You're like, oh, yeah, that's right. You're in the 5th inning of the game. And you're like, oh, let me flip over there. And you hear the end of Tirico calling a play. It's like, gain to 3. And then Collinsworth comes on. He's, Dan Campbell, really important for him this year. I'm like, nope, that's it. I don't even watch a play. Nope. I hear Collinsworth talking about season-long prognostications, and this year it'll be Campbell because it's Lions and Chargers. It could be about Tony Romo. I feel like the Cowboys were there every other year with Tony Romo.
Felt that way.
Jerry Jones, or Jeff Fisher was there a lot. Like, this is a key year for Jeff. And nope. I click it right off. It's nice to hear the whistle once. I just want to hear the referee blow the whistle one time because the football whistle has just the right sound to it. I'm like, oh, okay. I can hear that whistle now in my head at bars, at Doak.
Oh, yeah.
In Tampa. Like, it reminds me, I immediately have flash forwards and backs to hearing the whistle at key places in my life. And I know it's going to be there for me for about 4 months in just a little over a month. Can't quite get there, though, to watch the Hall of Fame game.
It's funny, just talking about this and the fool's errand every year that I run, which is to come home that day trying to lie to myself about how excited I am regarding the Hall of Fame game, only to have this sobering moment of actually watching the Hall of Fame game and realizing this is nonsense. The funny part about that is there is a childlike element to our fandom that remains as football fans. It's another reason that the NFL is king and football is king in this country. It's that does conjure that even when it's an exhibition game, partly because of the uniforms and the sounds and just certain sights and certain behaviors and certain things that play out that remind you of the sport and that you latch onto, and then it takes you back to your childhood. There aren't too many moments in any sport. Really, there isn't any in any other sport that rise to the level of childlike enthusiasm and giddiness that remains and has somehow carried over into my 50s. That when I was allowed, after begging my mother and my stepdad, who usually kind of went to bed kind of early. He's an attorney, and he worked hard, and he was up at the crack of dawn. So he a lot of times was retiring by the time Monday Night Football was coming on. And back then we lived in a 2-story house, and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go throw it on upstairs," which meant within 5 minutes he was sound asleep of having thrown that game on. My mom would then subsequently go upstairs much later. She's always been a night owl. She would go to bed 10:30, 11 o'clock. And she would make me go to bed before then when I was little, but I would beg her to let me, for the big games, let me watch Monday Night Football. And when you would hear dun 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 dun, and you do the whole, I would get so giddy. Like, that would bring so much joy. Just the sounds of that intro, knowing that we were about to watch a football game. And God forbid it was a big time matchup. And she would always cave. She'd be like, "Oh, all right, you're going to be tired tomorrow. You're going to be tired, but I know you want to see it because it's got so-and-so, usually a favorite player of mine or something like that." And she'd let me watch or flick it on in my room, and I had to keep the volume way down. And Tom, I never thought it at the time, but I look back on it now and realize how ridiculous it is. I had a black and white television in my room. I did. I had one of these old 10-year-old black and white televisions. Now, nobody, if you're listening to this and you are 40, you did not deal with a black and white television. If you are 30, you certainly didn't deal with a black and white television. And if you're any younger than that, you didn't know black and white televisions existed. But they did. And little kids like me in 1979 and 1980 would watch them. They were left over. Sometimes they were out in the garage, and you could bring them in because they were just something that were kind of novelties if you were out working in the garage. If my stepdad was using the vise for something or the recip saw or something, he'd have the little black and white going in the corner, and you could smell the work being done, like the wood being shaved, and you would walk out there and he'd have the game on the black and white. And then eventually the family had all color televisions except for the one in the garage, and he'd say, "Well, I'm thinking about upgrading this one out here to a color TV. We're going to put it up right over there. I'm going to put it in that corner right there. I think it'll work. I'm going to build a little stand for it." And if you want to take that black and white to your room and you went, "Ooh, this is my chance to have a television in my room. I don't care that it's black and white. It's got all 3 channels." 4 later on, but you realized you could turn it to 44 WTOG if you grew up where I did. You could turn it to 13, 10, and 8, which obviously were CBS, NBC, and ABC. And then later on, Fox. And you could do that 10. You realized all of it, and you could sneak shows or whatever it might be, occasionally even get the antenna just right for PBS on Channel 3. But that was all of it. And I would watch the Monday Night Football games on that black and white television, and it just occurred to me that I'm ancient because that is not an existence or a memory too many of my listeners have, although our listenership is 18 to 60. So maybe, and I know there are people younger than that and older than that and listen to them, but not in great numbers. But that's unbelievable to me. Like, that's what the Hall of Fame game kind of reminds me of, is the enthusiasm by which I tuned into a Monday Night Football game and heard that theme song on my little black and white freaking television.
My first television that was in my bedroom, I was around 7 or 8 years old, and that was mostly for the video game system because my parents wanted the video games in the bedroom so that when they bought their 50-inch square big
TV, it weighed 4,000 pounds.
Yeah, they always told me that you're going to burn the screen by the video input. I'm like, that's such a lie.
You're just making stuff up, yeah.
Yeah, until we got Mario Kart 64 that they liked, and Magic, they're like, well, let's give it a try.
Oh, and
it worked.
Yeah.
Like, in retrospect, I'm like, wow, that's one hell of a move. The TV I had did have it was color, but it did have the clicky channels. Like you had to turn the dial, like click, click, click. Well, Monday Night Football in those days, man, I was lucky to watch 2 drives until I got to about 10 or 11 years old. Then I was allowed to watch a quarter. Then I was allowed to watch a half because it was a 9:07 p.m. kickoff. 9:07.
I don't know what they were doing for years. That's insane.
Well, they wanted the West Coast viewership numbers is clearly what they wanted. It changed. It didn't change all that long ago in the grand scheme of Monday Night Football's history. When it moved to ESPN, it came off of over-the-air television and went to cable. ESPN made it 8:35, and they've crawled it back closer to 8 o'clock. ever since.
8:07.
Sunday Night Football now is, I think, 8:15. But yeah, it used to be 9:07 p.m. And it was a hard no from my parents that I could ever stay, even for Bucks games. It was like, no, we will tape it. We will put a VHS tape in. You get up early, you can watch the second half. If I got to halftime, I was lucky. And then my sisters would have people over to watch the games. I remember just staying wide awake and hoping I heard the living room go nuts. That's all I was doing, because I couldn't sneak the TV on. I was just hoping I'd hear people going crazy in the living room. It was a different time. Now you can, at least football does finish a little bit earlier than it used to back in the day on Monday.
Yeah, and there were a lot of bleary-eyed gentlemen wandering into work back in the day where Monday Night Football kicked off just after 9 o'clock. I mean, because we all do this. There are rules to football viewing that differ slightly from baseball viewing. There isn't a Sunday Night Football game that I don't tune into to at least some degree. It's maybe on in the background. Maybe I'm doing something else. Maybe I'm even show prepping for Monday's show. But it is on. I'm not going to not have Sunday Night Football on. It's Sunday Night Football. Why would I not have it on? The chances are very high that I'm gambling on that game in some capacity. Maybe many ways I'm gambling on that game. So there's no way it's not going to be on. And rarely is it not just on, but I'm engaged in it. So I already know I'm going to be tired on Monday, but you call it the price of doing business. You know how precious few of these games you get. And in college, the Pac-12 obviously was always the game that you just told yourself, well, all right, we're going to be exhausted. Sunday's going to be a rough one, but I'm not going to not watch Hawaii and Cincinnati tonight. This is kind of an intriguing matchup, and I've got a little juice on it.
Yeah, that's the juice part is important, especially when it's Hawaii, Cincinnati. I do have, for fun's sake, the Sunday Night Football schedule for this season before me.
So the games you will be watching.
Right.
Or I will be watching for sure.
Out of just a rapid fire, if you give me a 1 out of 10 watchability, because I think this schedule is awesome this year.
Sunday Night Football, buddy, Sunday Night Football, it makes me angry because what ends up happening is invariably you sit down and you're like, oh, this is going to be a good one. I can't not watch this one. And you're like, you realize it's going to be good. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
So their kickoff game is Cowboys-Eagles. Everybody watches that because it's the first game of the year. First Sunday Night Football game of the year. Ravens-Bills.
Yep, all in. Going to be awesome. Can't wait.
Week 2, Falcons-Vikings.
Should be a very good game. I'll watch.
Yep. Week 3. This one, you could choose to watch the second half or not. Chiefs-Giants.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll watch till halftime, and if they give me a reason, I'll stick around.
Right. You're hoping that Neighbors takes over and makes it a game.
That, by the way, if you ask for a rating, that's a 5 because you can't really get below 5. It's a football game.
But I don't think that any other game will be lower than that. So Patriots-Bills the following week.
I'm intrigued by the Patriots, oddly. I'm excited to watch the game.
Yep. Lions-Chiefs the next week.
Oh, forget about it. That's a can't miss. Got to get together for that one.
Atlanta-San Francisco.
That's me hoping San Francisco rises up and beats Atlanta.
I like the phrasing you use there.
Mm-hmm.
The following week, the uniform game. Packers-Steelers.
Fantastic. Can't miss it.
Yep. The next week, Seattle-Washington. Jaden Daniels.
Well, he's must-see TV, and this is where you get into, are you a sports fan? Because if you are, that's a really good game. It really is a great game. I'm excited to watch that.
Boy, the Steelers. Is it Aaron Rodgers? Next week, Steelers-Chargers.
Yeah, that's Aaron Rodgers, and you got a great quarterback matchup there. Remember, it's the Chargers now who, with Harbaugh, obviously, you're going to be physical. Yeah, I'm in. I like it.
Following week, Lions-Eagles. Absolutely.
Can't miss.
Bucks-Rams the week before Thanksgiving. The Sunday before Thanksgiving.
Let's get it on. Let's go. You know I'm locked in.
Thanksgiving night, Bengals-Ravens. Yes, absolutely.
Always. Great game. Yep.
Joe Burrow on a Thanksgiving night.
Forget about it. Yeah.
That following Sunday, Broncos Commanders, Daniels versus that defense. Woo.
The Denver Broncos are my vote. Now, we saw them take a huge leap forward this past year and a great rookie season. I think the Broncos are going to straight up be really good. Like, really good. They've got a very, very good defense. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. They've got an emerging quarterback and a system that's suited for his average-ass arm. Yeah, man, the Broncos could be really good.
Down the stretch we come. This is when flexes are available. Texans Chiefs, December 7th. Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Vikings Cowboys, December 14th. Feel like that's going to get flexed. That's my guess.
We'll see. Yeah, hey, listen, the Vikings are really fascinating. Remember that they had to go another round at quarterback now.
Yeah, they did. That's why I'm like, Bengals Dolphins, the 21st of December, might get flexed.
I'll watch Joe Burrow light up the Dolphins. The Dolphins are going to suck.
Just so you're aware, there is a Peacock holiday exclusive that you'll have to get your free trials for on December 27th. The next night, Bears 49ers is the last scheduled Sunday night football game.
Interesting game, man. There's a lot of history between the two franchises. All right.
And the Week 18 game is never determined until we get there. But that's a lineup, my man. That's good stuff.
I was doing what you're doing right now and that we're doing on the show right now. I was going through and looking at schedules and looking at our schedule amongst others, and I just got so goosed by all of this. I was so pumped. I'm like, here we go. This is going back to what I was talking about when I swung into Gordo's and we were having the debate about, get out of my head. No, I want to be free to dream. No, you don't. You're just going to end in disappointment. Shut up. So I was doing – that's true of like when it becomes normal to have a football conversation. When normalized football conversations are happening across the country, you're close. And I must have had 5 or 6 in the last week. It's the random conversation with a football guy. So just so you know, at the place we stayed at in St. Augustine on the beach there, they have, like a lot of places, they have a happy hour, right? And it's free drinks, happy hour from 4 to 6 or whatever it is. And, I'm not going to turn it down. So we went walking in to partake, and I ended up having a conversation with a perfect stranger who was wearing a Falcons hat. And he saw my Bucks hat that I happened to be wearing in that moment. And this is what I'm talking about with a normalized conversation. I saw the glare. I saw the glance. I saw the frustration from afar, even though he was waiting on a free drink. And I waited till I got mine. And then he, too, got the rum drink that was free. And so I turned and said, cheers, which he kind of was trying to decide whether or not that's an affront to he's a Falcons fan and we're the reigning division champions always. So his retort, I knew, would be something along the lines of, we swept you last year. And I knew ahead of time my response would be, and what good did it do you? So I was ready for all of it, but this is two football people having a football discussion just because we glanced at each other over the free happy hour rum. And it happened exactly like that, where I said, cheers, and he looked over and saw the hat. He said, guy, we swept you guys last year, didn't we? And I said, I don't know what good it did you. We won the division again, didn't we? And he went, yes, but not this year. And I said, I like the Penix pickup. That was well done by you guys. And then we went into this whole thing.
You could have told him, thanks for drinking Buccaneer juice. There you go. Enjoy your rum, pal.
But it was great. It was just sort of like, here we go. We're allowed to do this now. I feel like if it were in May, it probably wouldn't have come up. He'd have just glanced over. I'd have glanced back. That'd have been that.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with a crafty game plan because we play them in week 1. Stay away from the left tackle.
Well, we got a problem, man. I'm not happy about any of this. The Falcons specifically went out and drafted 2 edge rushers because they haven't had a good one since Abraham, right? They haven't had anybody in forever, so they addressed it. One of the guys is just a straight-up criminal. They didn't even care. They're like, that's all right. He can run like hell, and we need somebody off the edge. By the way, if you're an NFL team, what do you care? It's a league of mercenaries. Go grab your criminal. I think that's the kid from Tennessee. I could have just besmirched him, and I could be wrong. Could be the other kid. But I feel like it had to be the kid from Tennessee Come on, you guys do too. You would have guessed he was playing at Tennessee as well. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. I know this is maybe more for the third hour that's coming up here in just a minute, but I'm kind of curious how this works. I mean, people help each other out in professions. But, I heard a stat today after Scotty Scheffler won the Open, winning his second major of the year. Do you remember, Tom, and we had this discussion on the air, and I think everybody in the golf world certainly had this discussion, but this is applicable to really any walk of life in which somebody within that realm, within that field, within that office or whatever it might be, offers up help to somebody else, and then the very thing that you offered up and had a discussion about with that person really takes off and works, and like, what are you owed? We don't all say and do things with the expectation of some grand reward. So, I mean, that's fine. Like if you just give somebody some advice when they're in their time of need, and then that's the thing that sets them on the right course, it ought to be that's satisfactory. That makes you feel very good, that especially if you like the freaking person, if the person's nice, you're like, okay, good. I helped Bob out there. He might have gotten fired if it wasn't for me. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. I told him, all you got to do is, you go into your notes, you remind yourself this is the password, and you're set. Like whatever it might be. So here was the stat, and this just is unbelievable. It's now been 32 starts since Scotty Scheffler switched to the mallet putter after Rory McIlroy pulled him aside and said, listen, you need to switch putters. You need to switch to this mallet. I'm telling you, if you switch to this mallet, you're going to feel so much more comfortable. The way you putt will change. Guess how many times since that conversation that Rory, after convincing Scotty Scheffler to switch to the mallet putter, so he's played in 32 events since that conversation happened. Guess how many times Scotty Scheffler has won in those 32 events?
All right. I'm trying to rack my brain because I think I can get close. 12?
13.
Oh, yeah.
That's more than 30% of the time my man tees it up now. Since switching to the mallet putter, he wins.
It's insane.
I bet Rory regrets having told him to switch to the mallet putter.
So a point on that. Rory had a decent round on Saturday. Started off like gangbusters, kind of went to sleep for the middle portion of the round, and then closed pretty strong. He was interviewed on Sky Sports because I watched the Sky Sports broadcast. It was great. Peacock has that. You can just watch it instead of the American coverage. And Scotty had not made his push yet. He was still at 10 under. So when Rory got in, it was within touch.
Yeah, within 3, I think, at the time.
Yeah. And the interviewer said, now you got yourself within touch of the lead. What will you need to do tomorrow? And Rory looked at her and he thought for a second. He goes, well, Scotty Scheffler is just a really good golfer. And you could tell in his mind, he's like, I didn't do enough today. He's got 18 holes to go. So does Scotty. And Rory's already conceding in his mind, like, nope, I'm not catching him. And I'm trying to answer your question. Maybe I could go out and shoot 62 tomorrow and shock the world. But you know what? 62 today, or Sunday, rather, would have only tied for the lead. It would have forced a playoff. It would not have outright won. He would have needed to shoot 61 to outright win.
DeChambeau did the same thing. So DeChambeau, who played great today, of course, backdoored this great finish because he was out of it. It didn't matter. But I give him credit because he does fight. He nearly missed the cut, and he fought and got in, and then he went really low over the weekend. But I got to give him credit for this interview. I mean, he was asked about his fight. He was asked about coming back and having a great Saturday and then obviously following it up with a really good Sunday. And he said, well, I'm proud of myself. I mean, I wanted to be here for the weekend. I fought like hell to be here for the weekend and gave myself this opportunity to score and go low and do some things. And hopefully it gives me confidence the next time I'm in that situation. But at one point he goes, yeah, even at like 7 under yesterday, I realized we're not going to catch him. It's They just know. So in that way, for people that are not golf fans, just so you know, you're kind of watching a burgeoning superstar. Like, he's not nearly as charismatic. He is not an iconic figure in the game the way that Tiger was. There were many reasons for that. And, Tiger is still obviously is somebody whose overall career is only second to Jack's. And, he's the guy that you would compare any modern player to. And henceforth, that will be the case. Even still, Scotty has only now 4 majors. He needs to win 11 more to tie Tiger. But he's doing things in some regards that are Tigerish, very Tiger-like, and that's why these conversations are happening. Do you realize he was 1 stroke away from having won this event by 5? It means that he would have won both of his majors this year by 5 shots or more. Do you know that there are only 2 golfers in history that have won 2 different majors in the same year in which they beat the field by 5 strokes or more? 2 in the history of golf. One of them was Ben Hogan. The other one was Tiger Woods. That's it. That's all. Nobody else has ever done it. And if Scotty hadn't double bogeyed by going in the bunker and getting stuck on what number was that? 6? I can't remember. Anyhow, if he hadn't done it, I'm way off on that. I can't remember which hole it was. It was the back 9. Anyhow, if he hadn't done that, he would have won by 5 strokes or more, and he would have joined a very, very, very exclusive club. Pretty crazy to think about.
Well, yeah. I mean, in the last 70 starts it is now, he's won, 4 majors and 2 players and the gold medal.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, you only get a crack at that once every 4 years, and he wasn't really much of anything when the first go around with the Olympics and golf. So, or the first or second. So yes, he has captured everything, and we weren't on the air to discuss his press conference that happened last week. I really enjoyed that press conference.
It was an awesome press conference. He's fantastic.
Yeah, it's honest, and it also it is disinterest in the result, which is what all of the great people share in sports. Now, you could say it's in life too, but we talk sports here. Nick Saban is disinterested in the result. Tiger Woods is disinterested in the final putt on the 18th hole. It's not the same as, the third shot he needs to hit in round 2 on the 7th hole, or else this thing's going to teeter. Like, that process, that grind, the greats care about that more than they do the 2 minutes of adulation that they, feel for themselves when they complete the journey, which is what Scotty was talking about. That tells me that as long as he cares to play the game, he will not play it half-assed.
Right.
And if he cares to play the game and not retire and just be a father for the rest of his life, which he might do in the near future, who knows? He's going to do these things. He is wired in a special way because he's disinterested in the result.
Well, and it's interesting. Yeah, I might quibble slightly with phrasing. I don't think he's disinterested, but he values process over results. Agreed.
Yeah, he said it's not fulfilling. He's not fulfilled by the result.
Right. It doesn't change it doesn't change his life much.
Sure, okay, he's not disinterested, but it doesn't fulfill him. The result does not fulfill him in the way that the grind and the pursuit does.
Yeah, and I am always weary of people who talk this way, and I'm not weary of him. I don't look at him side-eyed. I believe him. There are people who say this because this is what sports psychologists tell you. And this is what people who have won and won a lot often say. But I don't often believe deep down where it matters, convicted or not, that players are, right? I don't think they are. I think they often, the reason that it's so hard is they do care immensely about the results. When history is at hand, when there is an opportunity to cement yourself in a way so few people who have worked so hard ever get the opportunity to do, how do you shut your brain off and leave the result over here to be dealt with later and execute the shot the way that process demands that you do? And so when you see somebody who can, it's scary, it's remarkable, it's to be absolutely fawned over. I find it really amazing.
Because he's not afraid. That means that he'll never be afraid in that moment, the way that so many others will be afraid. Like juxtapose it to Brooks Koepka, who's Mr. Major, and he was for a significant period of time in the history of golf. He was like 40 clear the next person over a 6-year span in the majors in terms of relative to par. He was always big game hunting, and he told you, I'm always big game hunting. These other tournaments don't matter. Scotty, on the other hand, is wired as if I'm going to play, then it's all going to be on the level. I'm playing to kill you. It doesn't matter if it's the Lipton. It doesn't matter if it's the Open. Like it's two different mentalities. Both guys, of course, obviously have major mantles that are full. Scotty's is about to be a hell of a lot more heavy, but there's a mentality there where based upon what he's saying, he's not afraid. He's just not afraid.
It's a really cool topic. It's kind of why I alluded to it to start the show. Hour number 3 forthcoming. Stay with Jeff Cameron, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV.